Hey everyone, welcome. It's Sarah, and welcome to another episode of Backstage Pass, the third episode where I get to talk to my friends, musicians, and really discuss being a musician, what musician life is like, what life is like off stage, and what they're passionate about, and what really moves them as people as well. This week I'm talking to Elena Urioste, and I'm going to actually bring her into the conversation right now. And there she is. Elena? We're connecting. Oh my gosh. How are you?
I'm good. Now feeling like very ragamuffin-y because you're
That
so.
it's so great to see your smiling face. Oh my gosh, it's been ages.
Oh,
It's been a really long time. So, how long has it been, Elena?
was it in Phoenix?
It might have been in Phoenix. In person, it might have been in Phoenix.
I think then that was 2011.
It might have been 2011. Yeah. So, it's great to see you again. It's been too long. For those of you who don't know Elena, I'm going to just give a brief bio, if that's okay with you. No, no make that face. She's worked with so many and soloed with so many orchestras, including Cleveland, Philadelphia, San Francisco, the London Phil, the BBC Symphony. You have given recitals in Wigmore at Carnegie, at the Concerthaus Berlin. You are a recording artist, a chamber musician, the director of Chamber Music by the Sea, and you are also a certified yoga instructor and founder of Intermission. Okay, what do you not do?
I don't know.
I don't know. She says, taking her sip of wine. So, so I want to start at the beginning, really, if that's okay with you, because I know your famous story is you saw Itzhak Perlman on Sesame Street, and that's what made you want to start the violin. Is that a true story?
Yes, I don't remember it because I was 2 years old, but that's
Okay,
on the street.
but
By
that's this. Yeah, the story that's told. That's awesome. So way back when you were beginning just as a young student, or even into your later conservatory days, did you imagine what your future career path would look like, or what life as a professional musician would look like? Is that part of what you imagined, or were you just sort of following along the path and hoping it would take you somewhere?
well, no, I had like pretty clear dreams. I think like much in the way that little kids want to be kind of stereotypical, want to have stereotypical careers like firefighter or ballerina. Really, really wanted to be a violinist, I guess because of Sesame Street. Um, and then I just got the idea that I really wanted to be on stage, specifically like big stages. The bigger the got that idea in my head, probably because from the ages of 2 to 5, my family lived quite near Tanglewood in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, and so they would take me to Tanglewood to see stuff, but also to just kind of toddle around the grounds. So I remember going into the shed and kind of like running across the stage because it was totally empty and just loving that feeling of being an exhibitionist, I guess. So when I was little, I think that I wanted to be a musician, perhaps for like not the most sophisticated, to be on stage and like twirl around in pretty dresses. And but then obviously the further along on the musical path that I went, I saw that it was quite a bit more um, detailed and rigorous, and required a lot more higher level thinking. But those the appeal of those aspects, fit very nicely alongside the dresses and the stage lights, I would say.
I love that. So I guess, if I mean, some musicians really enjoy the process of practicing and learning, and sort of the more, I hate to say intellectual, but it kind of is that whole process of internalizing the music. And some people enjoy that, but are more about the performing and really sharing that with others. Which would you say, which side of the pendulum would you swing on?
I think it depends on the day. I think it's really funny. Most musicians actually that I know will describe themselves as extroverted introverts.
Mm-hmm.
They're really fueled by time alone, going inside, thinking introspectively, um, but outwardly are quite, you know, um, outgoing and perhaps exhibitionist. Um, think I probably fall into that category. I do love the intellectual and tradition-based side of classical music. I mean, I think that's what it is. It's such a it's an art form so richly steeped in tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's nothing if you can't communicate it. Otherwise, it's just like a bunch of documents of
Mm-hmm.
old dead guys. So if you can't be a conduit for a shared experience, I think it's limited. So I would say you can't. But that being said, if you haven't put in the thought and the work and the woodshedding,
Mm-hmm.
there's a limit to what you can express and thus share with other people. So I think finding a balance has always been, yeah, on the menu every day for me.
So when you're performing,
Sorry, I am one of those musicians. Some musicians will say like, "Oh, I love practicing."
Mm-hmm.
Don't think I love practicing. Every now and then it'll just feel really good. Like my hands will feel good. I'll be in the zone in that sort of flow state, and then I'll really like it. But given the choice between like learning a twisty passage and like doing yoga, I would probably rather do yoga. But I won't.
Agree to that. So when you're performing, are you aware of the audience and this responsibility to really express those things that you've internalized? Is that a conscious process, or does it sort of come out of you in a natural way? Because I think some performers are very conscious about being on stage and the responsibility that really, that statue generates. And are you really aware of that, or is that not part of the thought process? I know it's a weird question.
No, it's a great question. I'm not sure I'd ever thought about it in those terms. I think I love being in front of an audience. I thrive off of it. It also makes me unbelievably nervous. I'm definitely one of those steely performers. Like I usually, think I'm going to poop my pants before I walk. Pretty much every time. I don't, but so yeah, I am aware of the audience and that I have a responsibility towards them and that I'm really there for them. They've driven however many minutes and bought a ticket, and they're looking to feel something. So I do take that into account. However, I don't really, when I'm performing, I don't really feel, I don't know how to articulate it. I don't feel the sense that I'm doing it like for them or like to meet expectations. I think I'm just doing it and hoping magically, that my intentions are coming across and that we are, having a communal experience. Actually, going to yoga teacher training kind of reframed the role of performing musician in my mind. Got very in my head at the yoga teacher training about like I was going into sort of default performer mode when it would be my turn to do the practice teaches. I would feel very like violin-y and like I was going on stage. And it was one of my instructors who said something to the effect of, it's not about wearing a mask, it's actually about taking the mask away. And like for the people practicing in your class, they're having their own experience. You're merely there to guide them rather than putting something on display for them. So I started actually thinking about playing the violin in front of people as the act of guiding their experience rather than ta-da, here I am. And that's actually helped a lot in both areas.
That's really interesting, looking at that as a communal experience where there is an exchange. And does having that thought in your head make performing less scary? Does it less anxiety inducing if you think of it as a two-way street rather than you sort of on stage being judged?
I don't know that it makes it less scary, because I still feel like the same level of responsibility, but it just sort of rejiggers it in my mind so that it's not about like me here and everyone else there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
More of a co-creative dance in a way. And just feeling like it's so cliche, but like breaking down the fourth wall, that
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
as, you know, performer and audience, we're all like responding to the same thing that is happening, which is there are a bunch of people on stage playing music and they're listening. So yeah, the lines become a bit more blurred that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think I prefer it, even if it doesn't necessarily make me less nervous.
Right, right. So do you have, I like talking about performing because I think that's the part that audiences experience it a single way, right? As a person on stage creating music, but for the performer, it's a multi-part process of practicing, preparing, but also to that moment of being on stage. Do you have any before concert rituals or things that you do? Does your yoga inform you in that sense of what you want to do to prepare to walk on stage?
You betcha. So a typical day, wherever I am in the world, I'll always Google to see what if there's a yoga studio nearby that looks appealing to me. If there isn't, I'll start the day off either in the hotel gym or just in my room, like self-guiding, a little flow. And then towards the afternoon, I will take a nap. A nap is very nap. I try and eat healthfully that day, get plenty of rest. I will practice. I will, unless it's a piece I really, really, really feel comfy with, I will want to go through every note in some way, probably like slowly and coolly. And then when I get to the hall, I always do like I've got like it varies, but I have like a bank of stretches, especially for the arms and upper body, that I do to make sure I'm like loose and limber, even though I did like a full yoga thing earlier that day. I'll definitely at some point spend about 5 minutes just breathing, if not like a full 20-minute meditation, if I can find the time and quiet. I've got like very nerdy violin warm-ups that I do. 20 minutes. It's like I call it my plunking, because a lot of it is just with the left hand. So yeah, some combination of yoga, breathing, slow methodical warm-ups, a banana, even though I hate them, but like all over. And yeah, that's
Why do
about
you hate bananas, out of curiosity?
it.
Not your thing?
There's like no, and it's probably associative at this point. They like confirm you are nervous. So it's the taste of nervousness.
I'm never going to be able to eat a banana again. Thanks a lot. No, I'm kidding. So you've been talking a lot about yoga, and I sort of want to hear how your practice began, what drove your interest, and you have created this wonderful organization called Intermission that is based on your dual interests of yoga and music. So I was wondering if you could take us through that process and what the impetus was and why you're passionate about it.
Sure. So I made my way to yoga in the summer of 2009. Actually, not for any musical reason. I was living in New York. I was in a really negative, kind of destructive relationship and feeling very sorry for myself. And finally, I was like, enough is enough. This is unacceptable. I'm going to yoga. And I had heard about a specific kind of hot yoga called Bikram from actually someone that I did go to Curtis with. I'd never tried it while I was in school, but I remember hearing this girl talk about it. And I saw that there was a studio near my apartment, so I dragged myself. It was like the most brutal, difficult thing I'd ever done. It was 90 minutes of like sweat pouring out of, like, did you know your shins sweat? My shins sweat. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
I'm doing it. It was just so hard. But at the same time, I felt so empowered, and like parts of my body were like, the muscles were firing. I had no idea those muscles even existed. And I just felt like completely saturated in it, like physically, mentally, emotionally. I had to invest every fiber of myself in this practice, and in doing that, I wasn't able to focus on this stupid guy. So I walked out of the class feeling really tired, but really uplifted and like empowered.
Mm-hmm.
I went back every day, and within a week and a half, I would say, I started noticing physical changes in my body. But when I would pick up the violin, it felt different. Like forearms felt much looser, and my shoulders felt relaxed, and I was standing different. Like, because you have to do a lot of balancing on one leg at a time, you notice whether you're a bit imbalanced across both sides of the body. And I was starting to notice all of these things in the yoga room, and then back in my apartment when I would practice. I was like, this feels a lot easier. And I'd always had a really kind of complicated and not so healthy relationship with the physical element of playing the violin.
Mm-hmm.
First time that things were starting to make sense, just within a couple weeks of practicing yoga. So I kept going back, loved it. In the meantime, one of my best friends, Melissa White, who also is a violinist, we were about to go on tour together for something with the Sphinx organization. And we just got to chatting, and somehow Bikram yoga came up, and she was like, I'm doing it. I was like, but I'm doing it. And we just spent the whole tour talking about how much we loved it, and trying to, like, cranking up the heat in our hotel rooms, trying to simulate the environment. And we just got to chatting about how many benefits we felt that this practice was bringing over to our violin playing, totally unexpectedly. And we discussed quite a lot how much we wished that we had had some sort of mindful movement practice like this when we were in the formative years of our training. So college, when we were practicing the highest hours, our bodies were like much more malleable and supple then. If only we'd had this practice then, so that we could ingrain those habits into our, teenage selves. So we weren't too serious about it, but we thought, like, maybe one day we'll start a camp, and it'll be like a practice camp, but there will also be mandatory yoga so that students learn this. And it took, like, I don't know, 7 years, but plans kept evolving, and finally we decided the name would be Intermission, meaning that it's got a lot of meanings, but an inside mission, taking a pause from your regularly scheduled program, the period of a concert where you relax, you refuel, you re-energize, so that you can go on to the next thing. We wanted students and professionals, so young musicians and also our colleagues, to just start noticing how their bodies actually felt, and how they were treating themselves in the practice room and on stage, and whether they actually felt connected in every sense. We wanted music to become a much more holistic practice. So little by little, like, the puzzle pieces of Intermission fell into place. We started offering workshops for students at music conservatories and youth orchestras, festivals. We started putting on retreats for professional musicians, kind of like artist colonies meet yoga retreats. And then finally we made an app. So yeah, and now we're doing a lot of, like, virtual teaching and online stuff. So that was a lot of blabbing.
No, it's a great story though. And so now that we're in the situation where we can't have these personal in-person interactions, how do you see the future of, well, the near future of Intermission, and also of your performing as well? And thinking of artists within this new lockdown reality, have you sort of reimagined what your relationship to music is and to your audience is, and it's anything along that line?
I feel lucky in that for whatever reason, I do feel like I've sort of landed on my feet. I get very nervous when I'm idle. And like, it's a combination of, like, kind of springing into action, but also getting calm when things feel chaotic. I just sort of, my brain goes into some gear where it just like makes a plan and like gets quite single-mindedly focused on it. So my husband, who's British, managed to get over to Philadelphia like right as a couple hours before Trump closed the borders.
Amazing.
Like luckily we got, otherwise I probably still wouldn't have seen him. And within a couple hours, we were like jet laggedly putting into motion a plan to record a music video every single day for all of lockdown, not knowing how long lockdown would. So we like set that in motion, and then I guess people saw that we were doing that, and requests came pouring in, and then we were talking to like BBC's In Tune about like his of Baby Shark, and that was like quite surreal. But I think people just maybe picked up on the fact that I was like ready to do stuff or whatever. I can't remember what, I think Melissa and I made a little like just a little video contribution saying like, here, like, we know this is a tough time. We know everyone's concerts are getting canceled and you have to be on the phone changing your air travel plans. Here are some things you can do, like while you're waiting on the phone, roll out your wrists, and here's how to, you know, reduce anxiety, things like that. And I guess at some point someone asked like, would you teach online classes? And we're like, oh, I don't know, maybe. And with all of the festivals, the music festivals for students that were getting canceled, some of whom we'd been contracted to play, to teach at, they moved into a virtual realm and kind of brought us with them. Others saw that we were doing that and scheduled virtual activities that we hadn't been scheduled to do in person. So yeah, I think I've been lucky that maybe because I was feeling very ambitious at the beginning, a lot of things fell into place, and yogically. So I have been teaching a lot of yoga online, doing stuff for intermission, musical things that stemmed from this project with my husband. I don't know if that answered your question at all. I got very rambly again.
No, it does. And I'm going to actually come back to what you've been doing with Tom in a little bit, but I'm going to pivot a little bit and go back to pre-pandemic times. And I know that you've done a lot with Sphinx, and you got a Sphinx Medal of Excellence, didn't you, a while back? Which is really, really cool. And this, for those of you who don't know, it's an organization that was founded, I think, in 1997 with the goal of like representing, well, of addressing underrepresentation of people of color in classical music, and with this idea of diversity. And this is a little bit of a tricky question, and you don't have to answer it, but have you in your career felt that there were specific challenges to you that you had to overcome? And do you think that's changed in the time span between when you began and now, essentially?
So with the question of race or ethnicity, I actually don't think that has been something that's held me back, unless I've just been totally blind to it. My parents raised me to be just like a very strong, no nonsense human. They advised me to be excellent and work hard, and nothing else should matter. And if it does, like, it's the other people's problem. Like, don't give them a reason to doubt you. That's the mentality. So that has sort of been my mode of operation my whole life. Back on it, I as I said, I don't think that being Hispanic has necessarily posed problems for me. I now see, like, in hindsight, that actually being female was much more problematic over the years. Comments that old white male conductors made, like belittling, silencing, pushing my preferences or requests like to the background, like, no, you'll do as you're told, little girl. That's which I don't think I necessarily even realized fully at the time. I always thought, well, you know, I have a lot to learn, and you know, I'm absorbing whatever, but not realizing that it was actually quite demeaning. So yeah, I would say that whereas, you know, there are these incredible initiatives like Sphinx to help further the mission of diversity in classical music, and it's like incredibly warm and encouraging and positive. There really hasn't been like a lot of training, like sensitivity training within classical music, where someone has, you know, founded an organization to say like, guys, don't do that. Like, everyone is equal here, and just be a nice person.
That's really interesting. So I'm going to pick up on that. I just remember when I was in school and conservatory, my teacher told me that women are weak and Asians are not expressive, so I would never have a career. And it's been my delight to have proven him wrong over the years. But I do remember being belittled, you know, for my ethnicity and also as a woman. And I have encountered that throughout my career. So here's another kind of delicate question. I'm middle-aged, happily so. And I found that well, maybe not so happily, but you know, you can't beat time. So, you know, over the course of my career, you know, getting older and having more experience and not being quite as young has helped me, I think, as a woman. So I'm not belittled or treated like I was 20 something, which I was for over a decade when I was nowhere near 20 something. And that has incrementally changed. Do you look forward to getting older, or, you know, have things changed as you've matured as a person, as an artist? Do you think that you're viewed differently now, given what you've been through, and also that, you know, we go through life and we become different people and older?
I'm not too bothered by aging. I like to think, at least, well, I actually think that this might sound really cheesy, but yoga has really helped with the idea of like being in the now, living in the present. I wasn't a particularly happy 20-something-year-old person, so I really have no desire to return to that era, even if it meant like my skin was slightly more. I feel very happy. I'm 34. I'm delighted to be 34. I imagine that being 44 will be equally, if not more, delightful. I think actually I have enjoyed, I've enjoyed the evolution of like shedding some of the layers of like needing to please people or needing to be liked by everyone, because it's like, for a performer especially, like you want people to like what you're doing, of course. And for some people that can be, myself included, sometimes that can be quite paralyzing. You get you know, you don't want to offend anyone or turn anyone off, but like it's just totally impossible for every single person to like you and the way you make music. And you want it that way, otherwise your music would be so appealing to like the lowest common denominator that I can't imagine that that would be very nice to listen to anyway. So I think now I almost like welcome adverse comments or like a challenge. Forces me or encourages me to articulate even more clearly what it is that I want and I believe in. And I think that that furthers me as a human, rather than, you know, like being young and like happy-go-lucky all the time and trying not to offend anyone.
I love that. I love the idea of pushback and sort of, I guess it's cliche to say, staying in your own lane and saying this is where I want to be and not have anyone try to push you out of it. And, you know, really standing up for yourself as an artist and what you believe in. And what I really love about what you do, Elena, is there's a transparency to, in a good way, when you're on stage. You feel that there's no sort of screen between you and the audience, and that what you see of you as a performer is very much who you are. And is that anything that you're aware of? I mean, is that something that you think about, or does that just happen because you're awesome?
No, that's like the nicest thing you could say. I've always, I kind of made the decision early on, like late teens, that I didn't want to, trying to remember how I framed it in my mind. Like, I didn't want to remember how I was supposed to act for different subsets of humanity. So like, okay, I'm allowed to act this way in front of my parents and this way in front of my friends and this way in front of this audience. I was like, that's really tiring. I'm just gonna like be the same person for everyone. And I find it like, yeah, invigorating actually. If you don't have to keep track of like, I'm allowed to say these words in front of this people or share this stories only with, these select few. I love to be transparent. I'm very happy that that comes across, because I think there's so many like skeletons in the closet of classical music anyway. I don't want to do anything to add to that, including like shrouding the profession in this sort of like mystical, impenetrable bullshit. I think like it's hard enough for everyone as it is. And I think just so many audience members, but also fellow musicians, are just so relieved when they see other people in the field who are going through the same things and not expressing it. I'm always so relieved when I talk to people that I really look up to, and they're saying like, oh my gosh, I feel exactly the same way. I'm so panicked about this. I don't know if I want to play concerts anymore. I was like so nervous that I wanted to vomit before this. And like, not that you want other people to be miserable, but there is like comfort in knowing that at the end of the day, these are just human beings and we're all kind of feeling the same things.
There is that commonality even amongst musicians. It is really refreshing to hear other people, as you said, that you look up to saying, I'm nervous, or I didn't like doing that, or this terrifies me, or having a hard time with the fingering on this one. I always have all my life. And just
or like, I don't work today.
That's a big one, I think. And sometimes, I think I said this in a past Backstage Pass, but I always think of musicians have a lot in common with porn stars, where it doesn't matter. You show up to work, it doesn't matter how you feel. You got to get it up, right? And it's very much how I feel sometimes: exhausted, jet lagged, uninspired. But you have to create that moment for, in my case, an orchestra, and also for an audience. And I'm sure you've had those days too. Not as a porn star, but showing up and not wanting to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Ooh. Elena is frozen for a moment. Oh, you're back. Are you back?
Possibly. But there was actually one day in January that I was feeling just really not on top of my game. Like, my fingers weren't working well. I felt tired and ugly and like unmotivated. And I not really thinking too much about it, posted a story on Instagram just basically saying that like, I'm feeling really insecure and unmotivated, tired, and like bad today. And that was it. And then I was like, bye, have to go play. And like, so many people wrote me saying like, I can't believe, like, thank you so much. It was so reassuring to know that you felt that way. And I was like, really? But it like prompted this dialogue about like being real and being honest and being vulnerable, which are all things that I really believe that my favorite performers are. So that is definitely the type of musician that I want to be.
And I remember seeing that post and being really touched that you were so open about that. And I think it is really comforting to read that other people, that commonality of experience and emotion is really, really cool. So I'm going to pivot way back again to what you and Tom are doing. If those of you who have not heard Urioste Jukebox, you must go listen to it because it's amazing. And it's so clever. And, you do play normal rep, classical rep, but you have these incredible mashups. And I think it's sort of wonderful to reframe what musicians can do and find a sort of creative way of doing that. So who does Tom write all of these arrangements? How do you guys decide what's going to happen and who's going to play what?
So we've got long list of like every single request that's being made. And then we go through and see which ones spark joy for us. And some of the sillier, more popular, more rhythmic songs, like we really want to do them, but like a lot of pop songs don't really have great melodies, which you notice once you take the words away. It's just like, you know, F, 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 you know, like find a melody to I'm Too Sexy was like quite a challenge, I would say. So for a lot of the ones that we want to incorporate but don't necessarily need, you know, a full 4 minutes of, Tom will, you know, devise a mishmash, a little medley of things. There are some that work quite well as full arrangements, and he's like a wizard with reimagining already great material. So yeah, he does all of the arranging except for the rare pieces that have already been arranged, either in a published version or someone has done it for us. Yeah, and then we just sort of try and mix it up, keep it varied. And we love the idea that someone who would come, you know, hoping for Mozart would hear Thriller and laugh. And at the same time, someone who came for like nursery rhymes or Baby Shark would get introduced to a piece by Debussy that they'd never heard. And I think it has worked out that people are enjoying things that they might not necessarily expect themselves to.
And I love that. And have you thought of collecting all these great arrangements and creating an album, maybe, of, you know, a quarantine album?
We have thought about it. A lot of them we have actually already recorded on our last 2 albums together. People happen to request things that we've already put out there. But certainly we have been talking about recording some of the more personal arrangements and medleys. We're waiting on some copyright advice, whether we're allowed to, you know, play Britney Spears for violin and etc. Or like Harry Potter. I don't know. I just somewhat complicated. But we would definitely love to do that and record all of the newly commissioned works. We definitely want to do that. Whether it's while still in lockdown or once we can get to a proper studio remains to be seen. But yeah, we definitely want to make some sort of little, little set of what we've been doing here.
I love it. I really think you should record it for posterity because it's rather amazing what you're doing. And I love it. And so you are married to a pianist and you work a lot together. And I pose this question to a lot of musicians who are also married to musicians. Not all musicians are married to musicians, by the way, if you're watching. Some of us are married to non-musicians or ex-musicians. In any case, you guys work together, record together, and live together. So my question always is, do you need to separate work self from personal self? Is the relationship, does it need to be different when you're doing different things or in different contexts, or does it really all fall under the same umbrella?
For us, it falls under the same umbrella. So we met as colleagues first, like a blind recording date that the BBC set up. I was a new generation artist with BBC Radio 3 at the time. Tom had previously been on the scheme with his ensemble, and they just set us up to play something because they were sick of flying my American piano partner over. And it really worked. It clicked immediately. Then we kind of went back into our own separate lives, which were quite different at that point. Then we re-met in 2016, 15 to play a recital together, and then things started kind of brewing more personally. It was like many months before, you know, something could actually happen. But we knew before we had feelings for each other that we worked well together. So I think this might not always be the case, but I think that probably works out better than the other way around. Like loving one and then trying to work together and like not quite having that work out, that can be quite tricky. And I've been in those situations as well. I really think it's different for every couple. I think we really like hanging out together, whether that's with our instruments or taking a walk or making food or being utterly ridiculous. So yeah, like we just like each other.
Which is great. I mean, it would be terrible if you didn't, but I mean, it's obvious that you have that love when we see you online playing these wonderful duets together. But I'm curious, have you ever had like a major musical disagreement where you really couldn't see eye to eye? And how does one work that out?
We haven't.
Hmm.
He got really mad at me once when I said that I didn't like Foray's first piano quintet, but I think that was like the maddest he's ever gotten. Um, I would, I think actually anyone who works with Tom will say this. They don't know whether like everyone feels like he is their kindred musical spirit. Um, like he just mirrors everyone so beautifully that you're thinking like, do we just have exactly the same thoughts about this, or is he like such a brilliant chameleon that he just like knows how to support everyone? I'm not sure what the answer is. I think he's so flexible and good that I like everyone around him like elevated. So no, I think we are fairly similarly minded about music. We haven't gotten into any major fights about the actual musical material yet. I mean, we have our disagreements, but I think one of the things that makes us work not only as a artistic pair, but just as people as we really try and hold space for each other and like let the other person be like feel their feelings and feel free to. So there's always.
And I love that thought of being able to exchange and you know, creating space for each other. And I think that's really important in music and in our personal lives too. So I have two more questions for you. One is, if you could sum up 2020 so far in a word, I know this is a big ask without, and I haven't given you any advance warning. What do you think that word would be? She thinks.
Exploration. At least that's how I mean, sometimes it just feels like a big fat nuisance, but like in general, I'm trying to actually think there are like so many opportunities to be explored through this. I've talked about this with Tom a lot. I'm frankly like, I guess I'm not surprised, but I'm disheartened by how many organizations within classical music have just been like, it's canceled, can't do it. Mm-hmm. Rather than viewing it like, classical music complains all the time about like, how do we bring in new audience members? And I want to be like, this is the time, do it through the computer. Everyone's at home, everyone's on their computers. Like, what better time to find new audiences and new ways of interacting with audience? And I think it's just such a shame. Obviously, like it's hard and it's a steep learning curve for most of us. Like, I am not a techie person. I've been thinking this whole conversation like, wow, Sarah's really well lit. I need to get a proper light. Like going in and out of yeah, I'm like very homespun with all of this stuff. We just have like the iPhone and a tripod and like a teeny little mic that goes into the phone hole. I don't even know what it's called. But I just think like it's not that hard to figure these things out. You just have to be a little bit open-minded and a little bit patient. And there are like so many cool things that could come from this. So many like new audience members and yoga converts and yeah, like the wealth of possibilities is huge. So I am treating it as an exploration.
I love that, because my last question was going to be half full or half empty. And I have a feeling that you would say
Wait, I don't even know. Now I'm confused which one is better because if it's half empty, then there's slightly more room to put in new stuff. But is half full better? I don't know.
It's just that you've just reframed something that's a bit of a cliche, I think speaks to the way you take any situation. I think that's kind of wonderful. I love your answer. Your answer is which one is better?
I
And I
forget.
don't think either has to be. It depends how you look at it, right?
True. Depends what you're putting in or drink.
There you go. Elena, thank you so much for joining me. This has been amazing. I think you're amazing in what you're doing with Tom and what you've done with Intermission and just everything. You're always a breath of fresh air for me. And I miss seeing your happy face. So I'm so glad I got to see you, even if it's far away.
We have to do something soon.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Yay.
Yay. All right. Thanks so much. Great to see you. Thanks to everyone for joining us. And this will be posted on YouTube next week. And last week's Backstage Pass is on YouTube this week. So keep on coming. I've got lots of great guests. And thanks again, Elena. Bye, everyone.